This is the Cycling Over 60 podcast, Season 3, Episode 24, Taiwan Cycling Route No. 1. And I'm your host, Tom Butler. The truth is that new things don't come easy to me. I feel like I'm always fighting to keep on track with staying healthy. My latest battle is with the dietary changes that I've been trying to make for over a month now. Food preparation is not my favorite thing in the world, and I'm finding it really difficult to get in the groove of cooking differently. I typically like to eat pretty much the same thing every day, just because it's easier that way. I'm not someone that needs a lot of variety when it comes to meals. The simpler, the better. That is one of the things that makes the change that I'm trying to make difficult. I'm using a meal plan from a company, and I do think they do an excellent job putting meals together. I think they have found that most people like variety, so they provided a 6-week meal plan that has a lot of variety. For me, the variety means it is harder to shop and harder to do meal preparation. I've gotten in the habit of eating 2 meals a day. This meal plan is 3 meals a day. So that means not just more prep time per meal, but an additional meal every day. I don't know why I find it so difficult to carve out time to prepare meals, but it takes real discipline for me. A second problem with the meal plan is that I would need a bit of time to get used to the flavor of the food. I have no doubt that I would eventually come to enjoy the food, but I think it would take a couple of months to retrain my taste buds. I've not really enjoyed the meals that I've tried so far. Again, I think I would eventually welcome the new flavors and the variety of the meals, but it would take me putting up with less appealing meals for a while. And the final obstacle is that because the meals are very low in fat, I don't feel satisfied after eating. Once again, I think this is just a matter of adjustment for my body. Even with the challenges, I think I'm going to be able to make this switch if I can get into the habit of planning meals out on Sunday and Wednesday. I originally thought I could do just Sunday, but I think I really can't do more than a few days of planning at a time. If I can establish this process of meal planning for just 3 weeks, I think I will get used to doing meals differently, and then I'd be able to adjust the other aspects of this new food. I'd be tempted to just call it quits, but I do believe there is a chance that eating very low-fat meals could help create more insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. And if that is the case, for me, it means it is well worth the hassle. Last week I mentioned that I'm looking to take my bike on the train and go down to Eugene, Oregon to do a ride. A listener from Seattle sent a text saying that they find that riding around Eugene is really good, and they have taken the train down in the past. It was encouraging to hear that somebody had a good experience with this. In addition to hearing this listener's perspective, Amtrak recently announced new trains are coming to the Northwest. Amtrak announced the new Aero trains that are, quote, a modern passenger experience, end quote. I'm really not sure what that means. Aero is spelled A-I-R-O, and it sounds like Amtrak is expecting that people are going to really like these new trains. The Pacific Northwest is set to be the first home for the new trains. They're scheduled to be here in 2026. In a blog post from June 21st last year, the League of American Bicyclists stated that their work with Amtrak yielded an agreement from them to increase capacity for bicycles on the Aero trains. Now, this makes me even more interested in taking a train trip this year so that I can compare the experience with the new cars in the future. Ultimately, I would love to figure out some trips down the West Coast by bike and train. There's a route called the Coast Starlight that runs down the Pacific Coast. It would be really fun to jump on that route for a few days and camp and bike at a couple stops. One option is taking the train to Martinez, California in October for the Bike the Bridges event. That event benefits the Northern California Special Olympics. The route is only 50K, but it sounds really unique. I think combining that event with another stop along the way could make for a memorable trip. I want to remind people that the Rails to Trails Conservancy fundraiser called the Great American Ride starts this Saturday. It goes to June 6th. It is not too late to sign up. The event is very easy. You just log the miles that you normally do into the event website, and it tracks a virtual team along the Great American Rail Trail. I believe the work being done by Rails to Trails is really important. I think they're helping to establish active transportation and recreation opportunities, and I truly feel that it's worth supporting them. And this fundraiser seems like a really fun way to do that. You can find information about the fundraiser by searching for the Great American Ride. I'll put a link in the show notes for the team I'm going to be on. The team is called Huffing and Puffing. Last time I placed the link, I forgot to put in the password for the team, so I'll make sure to include that this time. So go to the show notes and follow the link and join me and some others as we take this challenge on as a team. Last week, we got to hear about a great bike trip from a podcast listener, and I'm happy that we get to do the same thing this week. Scott Gruber joined me for both the Cycling Over 60 Zwift Thursday ride and also the Thursday Zoom chat. In the Zoom chat, he shared about a ride that he did around Taiwan, and I was really intrigued by the adventure. So he came on the podcast to discuss it with me. And here's the conversation Scott and I had. I love having the Zoom chats on Thursdays because it gives me a chance to chat with people I wouldn't otherwise get to meet. And my guest today is one of those people. Thank you, Scott Gruber, for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Let's start out by having you tell me about your earliest memories of the bicycle.
Oh, that's great. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and I had a BMX bike when I was in elementary school. And I used to ride with my best friend at the time, Dudley Mermanish, and ride to school, after school, just kind of out playing. So that's definitely my earliest memory of riding a bike.
Yeah, that's cool. And that sounds really fun.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember Webco. It was like that was like the brand, but it was I was so excited with that bike. It was fun. And Phoenix was pretty good for riding back then. So it was a great entry into it. Then when I was in college, I had a mountain bike and I went to UC Santa Barbara and they have a great biking community there. And so all through campus, there's bike paths all around. Everyone rides bikes at UC Santa Barbara. And getting to Santa Barbara, there's a great bike path. And so I rode a lot when I was in college. Then I sort of stopped and got back into it when I was during the pandemic.
Okay.
And so, like you, I was riding a Trek FX. Mine was FX4. I think you had told me you were on an FX3.
Yeah.
And so I had a flat bar bike, and I live in Los Angeles now. So there's a riverside bike path that also leads to the ocean. There's a beach bike path that goes from Santa Monica down to Palos Verdes. So I rode that a lot.
Now, right now, this time of year, when we're starting to get just hints of spring coming, a bike path along the beach in California sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty spoiled with it because it's a protected bike path. Although there's a lot of pedestrians on it and a lot of bicyclists. So, you know, it, it's a great place to cruise. There's a few people that ride real fast, but I'm not a speed demon kind of person.
Yeah.
And the view is fantastic. So next time you're in Los Angeles and you want to go for a bike ride, let me know. I'll be happy to show you.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, you talked about getting away from it for a number of years, it sounds like. Could you say why that was? Have you thought about why you got away from it?
God, I don't really have a clear reason. If I was to say why I didn't ride quite a bit, is I fell into the pattern in Los Angeles where it was a lot of driving. It was funny. There was some times when I did ride my bike from near downtown Los Angeles. There's a town called Silver Lake, and I worked at UCLA. So it's about 6 miles to drive back and forth, so about an hour. But I could ride my bike in just an hour and 10 minutes. And so I figured I'm actually just, driving 6 miles an hour both ways because it's about that long of a time. And I can ride a bike at, easily at 10 miles an hour. But I'm afraid of cars and didn't feel totally comfortable riding. So I fell out of the culture of biking. And but I'm really, really glad I got back into it. And I finally got my first road bike, and I have a mountain bike. So I've been exploring the Santa Monica Mountains as well as some of the local hills in Santa Monica and the Palisades and Brentwood, all along the Santa Monica Mountains leading into Griffith Park.
So, what road bike did you get?
I got a Trek Domani. It's the most, I really like it, but it was like the least expensive one. It was like, had, I upgraded the wheels and put carbon wheels on it. So it was like 3 grand plus $1,000 for wheels. And so it's not one of those like really, really expensive Domanis that are like what, 10, 12
Right.
$1,000. It's way out of my budget. But it was still a significant investment for me. But I like it. It's all black and has gold letters with Trek, and it's suited me well because I'm not a racing cyclist. So it's an endurance bike, and so it fits my body type pretty well. And throughout my whole biking history, it's the first time I had a drop bar bike. And I really, really like it because I can shift my position on it. And it's turned out to be a real good workhorse for me. I put like 12, almost 15,000 miles on it already.
Nice. Nice. Well, we got talking on the Thursday Zoom call about a trip that you did to Taiwan. And I just really wanted listeners to hear about that trip. It's an example of like, because of the podcast, I hear of all these great trips. And it's like, man, now I have another trip on my list. But I think this is like one of those kind of trips that it's like you put it on your list. And I'm wondering what first inspired you to go to Taiwan. Hey everyone, I'm briefly interrupting this episode to remind you that it is simple to have your opinion shape the Cycling Over 60 podcast. Look for a link at the top of the episode description that says send me a text message. When you tap the link, a text message box will open up and you can type something that will be sent directly to me. I look forward to reading all your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions for the show. Now back to the discussion.
Well, my wife is Sue is from Taiwan. So we had gone to Taiwan right before the pandemic. I am a web designer, so I was invited to do a web design workshop in Cameroon in West Africa. Over a 3-month period, I went to Cameroon and was in Los Angeles and then was in Taiwan right before the pandemic, visiting family there. And just it reminded me how much I love Taiwan. When I was in college, I lived in Taiwan for about a little less than a year and worked there. I don't know if you remember CompuServe. It was kind of
Yes.
like an internet service provider back in the day. I worked at a company, Fujitsu had bought it for the Japanese market, called it Fujitsu Serve. And I worked at a company called TTN Serve, and that was translating CompuServe to the Taiwan market. And so I lived there at a time when they were just building out all the subways. And so it was known as like the dark age period in Chinese. And everything was quite chaotic. And now 30 years later, when I went back, all of those subways are done. And the infrastructure is fantastic for biking. So after the pandemic, this was November 2023, we went back for a visit. And I wanted to, had gotten into biking quite a bit. And so I wanted to bring my bike and ride. And Sue's sister, Tina, who lives in Taipei, told me, "Oh, you got to do this ride. There's a round Taiwan tour that everyone does. And the giant bicycle company sets up the tour for it." So I looked it up and I was like, "Oh my God, this is perfect." So I signed up and it was a 9-day, 8-night ride around the island. which is about 900 kilometers, maybe 600 miles. And it is like a all-inclusive tour package. And so I, brought my bike, my Trek in a bike bag onto the plane and brought it over to Taiwan and joined the group.
Now, when you say you trek, you have two treks now. So which one has that? Was that before you got the
Well,
Damani?
it was the Domani.
Oh,
The
okay,
Trek
okay,
FX I gave to my son-in-law.
okay.
It's up in San Mateo. And so now in the family, we have a hybrid, the Trek FX, for my road bike, which is the Domani. And I picked up a mountain bike that I ride in the Santa Monica Hills, which is a Cervelo,
Okay, okay,
but that's a different story. So I
okay.
brought the Trek Domani to Taipei.
Now, so you said it was a tour company, and
Mm.
so they had the route all planned out. So that wasn't something that you needed to decide on.
No, no, no. I hadn't realized, but Taiwan has a great biking culture. And the tour company that I did is, you maybe have heard of Giant Bikes,
Oh, yeah,
right? They're the largest manufacturer of bicycles in the world.
yeah.
And they have a foundation in Taiwan and they sponsor these tours. And so it's part of the identity of Taiwanese to ride a bike around the island. And so it's a big deal. There's a lot of different groups. In my group, we had 40 people, and there was most of them were local Taiwanese. We had a few Chinese Americans. We had a couple from Malaysia, a couple from Hong Kong, but mostly it was Taiwanese. And the age groups were from like 20 to 70 plus. And I was the only non native speaker in the group. But I had studied Chinese, hadn't used it much in a long time, but I was able to communicate, and it really got me inspired to seriously study Chinese again because I had so much fun talking with people and riding with them during the trip.
Now they must have been kind of happy. I don't know what the right word is, but maybe even a bit impressed by you being able to converse a bit in Chinese.
It was hilarious because all my Chinese came back, and so I was, I used to go to karaoke all the time and used to sing songs in Chinese, and those came back, and some of the poems that I had memorized came back, and so all the time I was singing in Chinese, and everyone in the group, it was a kind of one of these peak experiences, and we all were riding together, and so all we did all day was ride and chat. And so they welcomed me. And I was, very, very grateful with their spirit of bringing me in and sharing with me the beauty of the island of Taiwan.
I had sent you a question if you had ever heard of the film Island Etude. It doesn't sound like you've heard of it.
No, I hadn't. There's a lot of YouTube videos on biking in Taiwan. I looked up that film and saw it was from a while ago, but I didn't watch it. Could you share a little bit about it with me?
Well, my understanding is that some of the almost rite of passage, maybe, of doing the trip around Taiwan, that it was kind of spurred on by that film. And
Oh,
so it is an older film, and it's a story of a deaf college student that decides to ride around the island. And I've not
oh,
seen it.
that's right in my wheelhouse. Some of my friends that I was riding with, they told me there's like, three things that you want to do as part of your Taiwanese identity. And one is to ride a bike around the island. And another is to swim in Sun Moon Lake. And another one is to hike up Jade Mountain. So far, I've got one of those things done.
So do you have plans to do the others? Is that like
Yeah, I
you're going to
rode
tick them
to
off?
Sun Moon Lake, but they have a big festival where like 10,000 people swim in Sun Moon Lake on the same day. And that's sort of like the big event to do. And so that's in September, and I haven't been able to do it yet, but it's on my bucket list for sure to do. And this kind of like the film Islanded too, to have this journey of touring the island as part of the identity of Taiwanese is so fascinating to me because it's like I had never gone bike touring before, and there was something so wonderful about slowing down on a bike, but yet you're going fast enough that you can go quite a distance to see the countryside. So our routine was, breakfast, morning calisthenics, hop on our bike, ride for maybe 20 kilometers, stop at a temple or a park. So we stopped at a lot of Taoist temples and Confucian temples and have a snack. Everyone would check their cell phones, but we would have have time to get some water and have some bananas and oranges and apples. We were very well fed, and so none of us had problems with fueling the ride. We'd stop at a catered restaurant, so we had great Chinese food for lunch. We'd sit all together and chat, and then ride in the afternoon with another break and meet up at the hotel where we'd have a catered dinner and then do it again the next day. So it was like, and the whole time we're, riding down the west coast of Taiwan, which is very industrial, but still quite a number of bike paths all the way down to the southern tip and moving over to the east coast, which is very agricultural. So going through rice fields in this East Rift Valley, it's just gorgeous. But even in the city, in the industrial areas on the west coast, you still have these kind of layers of mountains on, I guess, on the left, and on the east, on our east side. Taiwan has the highest number of over 10,000 feet mountains
Wow.
of any island in the world.
Wow.
So it's like great for biking if you're into riding hills.
Right. You talked about Giant, in Giant in 1977, the CEO of Giant negotiated a deal with Schwinn. And that's really when they took off. But ever since 1977, they have been a major manufacturer and really the carbon fiber bicycle available to most people, that happened because of Giant. And so
Interesting.
I'm wondering if you could, if you would see like the evidence of Taiwan being such a hub for bicycle manufacturing, or not really on the trip that you did.
Oh, totally, we did. I got sort of two anecdotes that I can share about that. One is we visited Giant headquarters in Taichung, and there's a cycling museum there, and it's a cycling cultural museum, and they have a beautiful building, and we attended a lecture about bicycle history in Taiwan. Really had a great stopover, and I became a huge fan of Giant Bikes because of it, because the tour was so well organized.
Mm.
They had two support vans, one with our day packs, one with our luggage. They had, gosh, we had 40 people in our group. Some were on e-bikes, some were older, some were more experienced riders, but we had leaders, two, three people in the front of our peloton and two, three, four people in the back of the peloton. And the vans would hopscotch and ahead of us, and they had professional photographers who were taking photos of everyone as well. So the Giant Adventure Company really produced a fantastic tour that I think is just gold standard of bike touring. Then it's like, I needed to get equipment. So when I was in Taipei, I had to get my derailleur adjusted. So I dropped into a bike shop. There's a lot of Giant bike shops throughout Taiwan. And so it's easy to get any kind of spare parts. I had a pair of cleats that wore out during the ride, and I was able to pick those up in in one of the cities that we had gone through. So it was like very, very convenient biking. A lot of people are on bikes. There's a lot of protected bike lanes and a lot of stores where you can either rent bikes or buy bikes or get your bikes repaired.
You talked about, which is I think an element of a well done bike tour is that you had meals catered to you. I'm guessing they were really good meals.
Very good. I'm a fan of eating all different kinds of cuisines, but the foods in Taiwan were particularly good. The vegetables were fantastic. The fruits in Taiwan are really, really good. And besides all the stir fried dishes. So we, always have a full meal with a wide range of Taiwanese delicacies to have.
So they have good mangoes in Taiwan.
They have fantastic mangoes.
That's good.
They have really good apple pears.
Mm. Mm.
They have wax apples, which are particularly good. There's this one sort of large fruit that looks like a bodhisattva's head that's very sweet and a bit of a mess if you're not too talented eating it. But it was just delicious. So I
Nice.
gained weight during the ride, even
Okay.
though I was
Okay.
riding like 100 kilometers a day,
Yeah.
gained weight. So
Nice.
it was, it was fantastic.
That's cool.
And, I went back in 2024 for a self-supported ride as well. And there's 7-Elevens all over the place. And you can always pick up sweet potatoes or baozi or hard-boiled eggs, which was a great way for me to fuel my rides when I was doing self-supported rides. There's one other thing I do wanted to share as well. All right, so I did the ride around Taiwan, but Taipei has a riverside bike path that's about 60 kilometers that's also completely protected. So Taipei is surrounded by rivers on three sides and then a mountain on one side. And there's when I was in Taipei, I would take a ride along these bike paths, and there's a lot of bikers riding that, as well as joggers and just birders, and it's just fantastic biking in Taipei. And there was plenty of places to stop to get good food on the way as well.
Do you feel like you experienced a real contrast between Taipei and LA as far as how much the bicycle has been embraced?
Yes, for sure. From my perspective, and I've studied Chinese and was talking with my teacher about this. She does podcasts as well in Chinese, kind of like talking about Taiwan like a native is her podcast. And she was talking about cycling culture in Taiwan and pedestrian culture. And there's a reputation of Taiwan to being a pedestrian hell. And I was like, I don't think so. Because compared to my experience in Los Angeles is the pedestrian.
Right.
And, for me, it was, the sidewalks are real hard to walk in Los Angeles. They're not kept very well. There's, not many businesses along the streets, like in Taiwan, where life is just pouring onto the streets. There's there wasn't as many big trucks and big cars that if you do get hit, you're going to be injured quite seriously in Los Angeles. And there's not as many kind of scooters, I guess, which I felt kind of make people more aware of all kinds of vehicles sharing the road. So I felt it was a great um, place to ride. Some of it may have to do that I was riding in, for sure, on the trip around around Taiwan. that I was riding with a tour group and we had a set route. Taiwan has a national tour route that is mapped out that the government has signs for and bike a lot of segregated bike paths that go around the entire island. Korea has that as well. I think I had heard one of your previous guests on your podcast were talking about the national ride from Seoul to Busan.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. In Taipei, because it has this riverside bike path, I had plenty of opportunities to ride in a segregated bike path that was totally safe. So I felt there was a real strong commitment to building uh, bike paths that is a bit of a challenge in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Now, preparing for this, do you feel like you prepared well? Did you have to prepare mentally as well as physically? How did you feel going into it, and would you have done anything different?
Yeah, great question. I had been, I fell in love with riding again. So I was, training pretty hard. I'm a member of the Rafa Cycling Club in Santa Monica. I'm chasing the gruppetto with that group. I'm definitely the slowest, but they're a friendly group, and they, really challenged me to ride up routes that are, with a lot of climbing. And so I trained. I was riding 100 kilometers a week consistently for a year or two with a lot of base riding, so flats, long rides, but also combining with a day of hills. And so I'm, I'm in pretty good shape right now. The biggest problem was like sitting on a saddle for multiple days. I hadn't done that before. But if you've ever ridden a century, I did a couple of those before I went to Taiwan. So I had a couple 100-mile rides under my belt. And so I was, you know, frankly, I don't think I would be singing while I was riding if I
Okay.
wasn't in pretty good shape. And so I was able to, with the pace that we had, I was able to ride and talk without any problem. And that's usually a good sign for
Yeah.
my cardiovascular if I can talk while I'm riding.
No, that's perfect. So, what kind of gear did you take with you as well as the bike? Did you have?
I had two kits. I had a tire repair kit. I had my, first aid kit for when I went on the tour to Taiwan, the round the island tour. I brought more stuff than I needed,
Okay.
but we had the support vehicle, so I was able to bring my suitcase with me. I couldn't leave my stuff in Taipei, so I had to bring everything with me. So, but my bike, I didn't carry much on the bike at all.
Okay.
When I went back in 2024, it was self-supported, and I got a tail fin rack that is kind of like a 30-liter backpack, but on a mounted on a rack that worked great. And that's all I carried.
Gotcha.
And that one, I definitely had learned a lot from my first riding trip of what I needed and what I didn't need. I brought like Cliff Bars, and I brought like, powdered electrolytes to put in my water. And I
Right.
can get all that in Taiwan. It's no problem.
Gotcha. And do you think that you were prepared as far as your clothing? How's that aspect of it?
I went in November, and that's like prime season for biking. So there's tours like every week in groups of 40s. So there was other groups that were hopscotching ahead of us, and then we'd pass. So we had a couple days of rain, and I didn't bring a rain jacket because it was still really warm. But the tour group gave us a rain jacket,
Okay.
and they also gave us two jerseys. So I had a rain jacket from them that I used. We, maybe I think the fourth or fifth day, we did some climbing. And, to get from the west side of the island to the east side, we had to climb over a mountain. And on the east side of the island, we ran into rain. So it was really raining hard. Someone crashed in the rain. But in general, it was humid and pretty warm. Beautiful weather. I think though, if I was to ride across the middle of the island in the mountains, it can get quite cold. So I'd have to have a change of clothes to be able to. So I did, layering and had enough to, if I did get cold, I would have plenty to wear. I think the biggest challenge is worrying about getting sunburned.
Okay.
So a lot of people had kind of sleeves that are sun protecting and pants that are sun protecting. But I went with shorts. I'd even worked on my tan a little bit, so I didn't get sunburn. And there was certainly plenty of sunscreen with the tour group supplies. So every time we stopped, everyone put sunscreen back on.
So, doing a lot of cycling in LA, you would get used to the heat, but there with the heat and humidity, it seems like it would be quite different.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with the humidity, but again, November is really like the prime time of year.
Okay.
If I was there during the summertime when it's really, really hot and humid, it would be a whole other kind of experience.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So we timed our trip around the best time of the year. I'd recommend that as, spring and autumn would be the really good times to do any riding in Taiwan. Same in Korea too, actually. It can get quite warm in the summertime there as well.
Do they have storms in the spring?
The typhoon season's towards the end of the summer.
Okay.
When I went in 2024, there was a typhoon late in the season in the end of October that hit the day before we went. So I was a little worried that a lot of trees would be felled. But the city government cleaned everything up within a day. I was blown away.
Wow.
The city governments are very functional and efficient.
So when you look back at the trip around the island, I think that is called Taiwan Cycling Route 1. And then there's also a name Hondu. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
That's the tour. It's called Huan Dao, which
Wandao.
means,
Okay.
yeah, it's translated as around the island. Everyone is saying, "Oh, you're doing the Huan Dao," and everyone immediately knows.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so, in fact, I was like, I've done some tours in Los Angeles that I called it the Juan LA tour.
Okay.
So it was
Okay.
like around LA.
Gotcha.
But it's the big deal. It's the Juan Dao is the slang term for taking that route one around the entire island.
Now, do you have like something that jumps out as most memorable from that or like most beautiful from that? Would it be possible to?
Certainly the people that I met, and the conversations that I had. There was one gentleman from Hong Kong who shared with me that he had been battling with depression over 10 years and cycling that he didn't share with his wife. And he, through cycling, was able to heal and take care of some of his mental health issues.
That's awesome.
There was a married couple that were celebrating their 25th anniversary. And they said, if we can if our marriage can last 25 years, we can have the strength to do the Huan Dao. And so they were celebrating their anniversary by doing the Huan Dao, the,
Nice.
the tour to Taiwan. There was a 73-year-old who I asked, why are you doing the Huan Dao? And he said one of his best friends had died the previous year, and it affected him so much that he decided not to wait for to seize the moment in his life and do things that he hadn't done. So he was doing the Huan Dao in memory of his friend and to seize the moment in his life. There was a mother and daughter who were riding together. They were on e-bikes, and so they were having a mother and daughter relationship, sort of bonding experience. There was a husband and wife from Malaysia. They ride a lot in Malaysia, and they came over to do the Huandao. There was a one gentleman from Northern California who convinced his two friends who had done the Huandao before. A lot of people do it more than once. And so this was his second tour of Taiwan. And so he convinced a couple of his buddies from his cycling club in Northern California to go with him. So they were experiencing their first Huandao. So I totally, they have a 9 day one, but there's also an extended tour of Taiwan that hits the most northern point, most western, eastern, and southern point. So it's extended. Instead of 900 kilometers, it's maybe 1100 kilometers, a little bit longer. So that one's for more advanced riders who can do a couple centuries during the ride. I haven't done that one. It's just this, hearing those stories and seeing people, doing their best to and enjoying that adventure really affected me a lot and was a peak experience in my life that I was able to both do that tour with them, but have them share some of their life stories.
Now, you had more knowledge of Taiwan than maybe, the average person in the US would have. Someone that doesn't know anything about Taiwan, is that going to be just like a great way to see a lot of culture, a lot of different parts of Taiwan? Was there time to experience different places as you went around?
Definitely. Each English is almost the second language in Taiwan. So if you don't speak Chinese, you're in good shape. I was fortunate enough that, they humored me and only spoke Chinese. So I was able to, work my way with the language skills that I had, which, are not as good as I would hope. The ride is, we stop at museums, we stop at temples. There's English and Chinese descriptions at each of these temples. We stopped at a festival for the sea god Matsu. And, although there was no explanation of what was happening, but it was quite a scene. It was a street festival with a lot of parade and a lot of different cities and towns represented in the parade. Again, we went to the giant headquarters, which of course had bilingual materials. There's a lot of people that speak Japanese as well. Um, and signs are in Japanese, Korean, English, and Chinese. If you wanted to experience Taiwan, there's no better way to see it than doing the Tour de Taiwan bike ride. It's a really, really special experience. And not only do you see a lot of the industrial area, but you also see this agricultural area. So you get a real strong sense of the diversity. I hadn't expected the East Coast to be so Polynesian. It reminded me of Tahiti or Hawaii. Had a very strong Pacific Island feel. And, that led me to learn that some of the languages in Polynesia originated from the people who were emigrated in Taiwan long, long, long time ago.
Interesting.
So there is that cultural connection with the indigenous population in Taiwan.
Okay, Scott. So here's something for you to think about. If a group of people came to you, because I see you as kind of a unique resource now. You can speak a little bit of the language. You've done the trip once. If a group of people came to you and said, "Scott, we really, we got a group of us that are going around Taiwan. We'd like to pay for you to go with us. Would you be open to that?"
I would probably pay my own way and definitely would lead the group.
Okay.
I was talking with some friends who wanted to do just that, and
Okay.
it's I want to go back and ride more. So yes, I would love to go back and lead a group to ride in Taiwan. I got a book on bicycle touring called Taiwan Roads Above the Clouds that has a lot of GPX files. So I've got all the maps and, can use them to navigate some wonderful routes. I followed these routes during my ride in 2024 that was unsupported. So a friend of mine who I met during the 2023 ride around Taiwan, we rode from Taipei to Sun Moon Lake, which is maybe 3, 4 day ride from Taipei, and used the GPX maps from the roads above the clouds. It didn't take us into the high mountains, but I was on the foothills of the mountains, and that was challenging enough for me. It was intense, but I do have a long-term goal of riding up Ali Shan and Wuling Shan, which is like there's a famous King of the Mountain KOM challenge in Taiwan, riding from Hualien to Wuling Mountain. That I'm sort of have a long-term goal to try to do that. So I want to go with either beginners who, because I know how to get e-bikes now, or more advanced people who want to ride some mountain. So I'm looking forward to going back. The challenge is that I also want to ride in Korea and Japan
Yes.
and maybe
Yeah.
in Europe or Colombia in South America. Even I still need to do the ride from Seattle to Portland that you
Yeah.
had talked about. I was
Yeah.
very inspired by that ride.
Well,
And
it's coming up.
so there's
So-
so I'm still training. I did a Grand Fondo in Mammoth last year, and I have a century with some friends from Rafa Club, the J Takahashi Spring Classic. It's a self-supported century in May, and then I'll do some Grand Fondos in Santa Barbara in October. So I've got some rides to keep in shape for when the next time we go to Taipei. So we got to go. Tom, if you ever want to go and experience a ride, I think the Tour de Taiwan, it's a great fully supported ride, and it's not expensive for a tour. It's like $1,700 for a single room, which is a bargain for what you get. Because with you know, not a shameless plug for them, but it's a really great deal, and the accommodations are fantastic. On the east side, there's hot springs. So after you have ridden for 7, 8 days, you stop. The hotels that we stopped at had hot springs, so you can get a nice relaxing recovery experience for hopping on the bike the next day.
It certainly sounds like one of those special trips, just all the different elements of it, not just mangoes, which in and of itself is a good reason, but all the other just the layers of it, the different terrains and the fact that the country is set up so well for bicycles that Taiwan is a hub for bicycle manufacturing, and it would just be interesting to go do that.
From what I've read or people who've ridden in Taiwan, it's the hidden gem for cyclists in the bike touring
Yeah,
universe.
I believe it.
It's a really, really great place to ride. Gosh, I'm quiet, but my heart is bursting thinking about planning a ride.
Well, it would be fun, and maybe we'll have to figure that out. There's so many rides that I'm trying to figure out how to do, both in the
Well,
States and all over. So
it's interesting. I'll plant a seed for you to talk with your wife and daughter and her husband. A lot of people were on e-bikes. Some people started on a regular bike and switched to e-bikes. And so they made it accessible for anyone. And, although I did the 9 day ride, they also have shorter 3 day rides just on the East Coast. The pacing for a 9 day ride, it's a lot of, you're on the bike, all the time. It'd be nice to to do it more slowly, to have a couple rest days after like 4 days, have a couple rest days in between the tour. But it's accessible for anyone who can be on a bike. Again, there was people from 20 to 70, people on e-bikes, and everyone did great. No one. I don't think struggled. There was some, there was one accident. A dear friend crashed and had to drop out, but that was, it was a freak accident, just slippery during the rain.
I actually don't think I'd have a hard time selling Taiwan. It's kind of interesting because my daughter has spent more time in the Taipei airport than any airport in the world because she's done a few trips to the Philippines, and there's always seems to be a number of hours that is spent in Taipei. And so,
Interesting.
I think for her to expand like what she sees in Taiwan, I think she'd be really interested in that.
I couldn't recommend it more. It's a really, really great ride. I don't know if I tried to share some of the photos. Have some Google photo albums that I tried to share with you. If you had a chance to check some of those out, I really should make them public, but it's a very Instagrammy sort of tour because it's like, beautiful architecture, beautiful foods, beautiful people, beautiful locations all along the way. And you're kind of in your own group. And so, you're making friends with people. And I found the Taiwanese were super friendly and open and welcoming. I don't think should be a hard sell. I'll
Yeah.
send you the link to, I think it's giantcyclingworld.com.
Okay.
Lists all the tours, and they do them all year long. And they have, 9-day ones to 3-day ones to 1-day one. It was
Well,
great because I had my GPX and I had my Strava route for all of the touring that I did in Taiwan. And so I've
yeah.
got, I also used, there's an app called Relive
Okay.
that will create like a 3D map of the route of any GPX route. So I would
Okay.
use that and point it at my photos, and it would generate a whole sort of slideshow for it,
Nice.
which is really fun.
That is fun. Well, Scott, I just appreciate so much for you taking the time to come on and talk about this. And I am inspired. I am going to be looking to figure out how to get to Taiwan, along with a lot of other things I want to do. But thanks for coming on.
Hey, Tom, I just joined Cycling Over 60 on Strava just now. But
Okay.
I wanted to let you know, is, part of my personality when I get into a hobby, I tend to go broad.
Okay.
And so I've been listening to a number of podcasts on cycling, and your podcast really has meant a lot to me. The kind of sharing that you do on your own personal journey has inspired me to be more healthy and to take care of myself and to ride when I'm in my 70s. And the guests that you have, really tell great tales, and they resonate with me a lot. So I'm really, really happy that I reached out and rode with you on the Zwift, and we'd had the Zoom and had a nice chat while we were riding together. And then, that you invited me to this podcast is like a highlight of my year so far.
Well, that's really cool for you to say. And man, I really appreciate that feedback because that's, really what I want it to be about is for people I've experienced so much positive things for it, and I want other people to as well. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
True. You mean a lot to a lot of people, man. It's you do some good stuff.
Thank
You
you
got
so
the
much for that.
right attitude.
Thank you. Well, hopefully we'll get to ride together again on Zwift and on the Zoom. And
I'll see
until
you in a
then,
couple days.
okay.
It's what, Thursday at 3 is usually when you do
Yep.
your ride.
3 p.m. Pacific time. So yeah, for sure.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Talk to you later now.
Thanks, Tom.
Scott talked about Taiwan being the hidden gem of cycling locations. I can easily see that being the case after hearing him talk about his trip. With a tour company as connected with cycling as Giant Bike managing the ride, it is easy to imagine it will continue to be an excellent experience. The Giant Adventure website, which is the website for their touring options, they call Taiwan a cycling paradise. It sure seems to me that there would be a sense of pride on behalf of the company to give riders the best experience possible in their home country. I'm going to see if we can get some of Scott's photos in a post in the Cycling Over 60 Strava Club. So keep an eye open for those. Let me again encourage people to join the Thursday Zoom call. You can get an invite to the call by sending me an email. My email is in the show notes. There's also the Cycling Over 60 Zwift Thursday ride. You can access that by joining the Cycling Over 60 Zwift Club. But even if you aren't doing the Zwift ride, stop by the Zoom chat and say hello. They both happen at 3 p.m. Pacific time. One final reminder about the Rails to Trails fundraiser. Come join in with Team Huffing and Puffing. The link and the password to join the team are in the show notes. That is it for this episode, and I hope you get out this week and enjoy the road, whether you're getting pampered on an organized cycling adventure or whether you're just out near your home. And remember, age is just a gear change.